When I think back on it now, it feels like a whirlwind. It all happened so fast, and I guess in a way, I was swept up in the excitement of it all. To say that I was in love with Michael would be an understatement. He was my world, my best friend, and the person I believed I was going to spend forever with. We had the kind of relationship everyone dreams of: passionate, deep, and comfortable. But there's something about comfort that, over time, starts to dull the spark. Our wedding day was beautiful. Perfect. I wore this amazing white dress I had fallen in love with months before, and Michael looked so handsome in his suit. It was like a dream. We had friends and family gathered around, and everything seemed so right. But looking back, there were moments during the day when I couldn't shake this weird feeling, this nagging thought in the back of my mind that maybe, just maybe, something was missing. I couldn't tell anyone, of course. I was getting married to the man I was supposed to spend my life with. He was my choice, my person, and yet, on that day, I felt like something was slipping through my fingers, but I couldn't figure out what. I was so happy, so thrilled by the whole celebration. But I still had this underlying feeling that I couldn't place. And then, of course, we went on our honeymoon. Michael and I had decided to go to Hawaii, an amazing place. The sunsets, the beaches, the warmth that should have been perfect. But that lingering feeling never quite left me. We were in paradise. Yes, but I couldn't shake the sense of unease. Our first couple of days were filled with typical honeymoon activities. We went to the beach, had romantic dinners, and explored the island, but when we were alone in our hotel room at night, the honeymoon bubble started to pop. I noticed myself becoming restless. My thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. Not that I didn't love Michael. I did, I really did. But there was something else inside of me that was calling out for attention. Something I couldn't ignore. It's hard to explain. The intimacy between Michael and me had always been amazing, but it started to feel almost predictable. There was no thrill, no excitement. And while I wasn't unhappy with Michael, I found myself being pulled in a direction I knew I shouldn't be. One night, we went to a bar by the beach. The mood was lively, with the sound of waves crashing in the background and a gentle breeze blowing through the palm trees. Michael was in a great mood, laughing with some of the people we met. He was the life of the party, as always. I couldn't help but admire him for being so outgoing, so easygoing, but at the same time, I felt this emptiness inside me. And then, there was Jason. Jason was Michael's best friend. I had known him for years, and we always got along, but I never really saw him as anything more than that. He was just Michael's friend, nothing else. But that night, something shifted. We were talking, just catching up, and the more we spoke, the more I realized how easy it was to talk to him. We laughed about random things, and before I knew it, we were standing a little closer than I had intended. The alcohol was probably a factor, but there was a tension in the air between us that hadn't been there before. When Jason looked at me, really looked at me, it felt like time stopped. He gave me this look, this intense gaze that made me feel seen. Not just the wife, not just the person who had always been around, but me. And in that moment, I felt a spark, something electric, something that wasn't there with Michael anymore. I felt desired, and that feeling was intoxicating. I tried to ignore it, tried to brush it off, but Jason's presence lingered. After a while, we found ourselves alone, walking along the beach together. It felt like it was meant to happen, like it was fate pulling us together. We talked more, and at some point, I don't even remember how it happened, but we kissed. It wasn't a passionate, wild kiss. It was slow, almost tender, but it was enough to send a shock through me. That moment changed everything. I couldn't believe what I had just done. What had I been thinking? What was I doing? But as Jason pulled away, looking at me with wide eyes, I realized I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want to push him away, because the truth was, I was drawn to him. I walked away from the kiss with so many conflicting emotions. Guilt, excitement, confusion. But more than anything, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I went back to the hotel room that night and Michael was already asleep. I tried to sleep, but my mind was racing, replaying everything that had just happened. What was I going to do? What did this mean? The guilt was overwhelming, but there was this other feeling too, something I couldn't describe. Something I had never allowed myself to feel before. I couldn't stop thinking about Jason, and in a way, I was ashamed of myself for wanting more. It was the beginning of a spiral that I didn't know how to control. It's funny how something small can snowball into something much bigger, isn't it? That first kiss with Jason, it seemed like a mistake at the time. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I felt a deep sense of guilt that washed over me whenever I looked at Michael. But then, there was also this pull toward Jason that I couldn't ignore. The more I tried to push it away, the more it seemed to consume me. That night, as I lay in bed next to Michael, the guilt was suffocating. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to destroy what we had. But that nagging feeling, that need for something else, something more, kept whispering to me. When I closed my eyes, I saw Jason's face, his eyes full of longing. I felt trapped between two worlds: the safe, comfortable love I had with Michael, and the wild, thrilling attraction I felt toward Jason. The difference was clear, but I couldn't seem to resist the allure of the unknown. Over the next couple of days, I kept telling myself it was just a moment of weakness. I even tried to convince myself it was no big deal. We were on our honeymoon, we were both drunk, and it didn't mean anything, right? But that's where the lies began to take hold. It was a lie, I told myself, but it didn't make it true. Jason and I kept talking. It started innocently enough, casual conversations by the pool, jokes, and laughing over stupid things. But every time I saw him, that electric pull between us grew stronger. We had this undeniable chemistry that neither of us could ignore. I didn't want to admit it, but it was there. And the more time I spent with him, the more I realized I was falling for him. The temptation was becoming too strong to fight. One evening, after dinner, Michael and I went to bed early, exhausted from the day's adventures. But I didn't sleep. My mind kept racing, and I could hear Jason's voice echoing in my head. It felt like he was right there with me, even though he wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about how he made me feel. Alive, wanted, like I was important. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed and quietly grabbed my phone. I told myself I wouldn't do it, that I was being ridiculous, that I should just forget it. But I couldn't. I sent Jason a message. Meet me outside. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I just wanted to talk. Maybe I was looking for an excuse to see him again. But deep down, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted him. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Jason had replied, "I'm already outside. I don't know why I wasn't afraid of the consequences. Maybe it was the rush of doing something forbidden. Or maybe I just needed to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time." I left the hotel room and crept out into the warm night, the air thick with the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. Jason was waiting for me, standing by the edge of the beach, his silhouette outlined by the moonlight. When he saw me, he gave me that same look, the one that made my heart race. "I shouldn't be here," I said even as I closed the space between us. But I didn't pull away. He reached for my hand, his touch sending a shock through me. "Neither should I," he said softly. We didn't need to say anything else. The tension was palpable, thick and heavy between us. And in that moment, all the guilt, all the confusion faded away. I felt like I was finally being seen, finally being touched in a way that felt different, like it was meant to happen. We kissed again, this time more urgently, with more passion. His hands were on me, pulling me closer, and I didn't push him away. I should have. I knew I should have. But I didn't. It was wrong. It was a betrayal. But I couldn't stop. I don't know how long we stayed out there, but when I finally pulled away, I realized the reality of what I had done. I had crossed a line I couldn't undo. I was no longer the woman who had just kissed Michael's best friend. I had become someone else, someone I didn't even recognize. As I walked back to the hotel room that night, my heart was pounding in my chest. My mind was racing. What had I just done? How was I going to face Michael after this? How could I live with myself? But the next morning, when I woke up next to Michael, it was like nothing had happened. He was still asleep, his breathing steady and calm. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't feel the same way about him anymore. It wasn't that I didn't love him, but I was no longer in love with him the way I had been. It felt like a switch had been flipped inside me. But I couldn't tell him. I couldn't confess to the betrayal. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face the consequences. The next few days were a blur. I spent my time between Michael and Jason, hiding my true feelings behind a veil of guilt and shame. Every moment with Michael felt strained, awkward, like I was living a lie. But with Jason, it was different. It felt easy, natural. I felt like I could be myself, like I wasn't constantly pretending, and that made everything so much harder. As much as I wanted to end it, as much as I wanted to stop, I couldn't. Every time Jason looked at me, I felt that pull. Every time he touched me, it felt like I was being awakened from a deep sleep. I was falling for him, and I couldn't stop myself. I knew I was hurting Michael, but I didn't know how to stop it. It's strange, looking back on it. The guilt, the fear, the constant sense that everything was slipping through my fingers. It was like I was living a double life. The more I tried to bury my feelings for Jason, the more they consumed me. It wasn't just about attraction anymore. It was about something deeper. I wasn't just drawn to him physically. I was emotionally attached to him in a way that I hadn't been with Michael for a long time. Every time Michael smiled at me, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. I knew I wasn't being honest with him. I was betraying him in the worst possible way, and I couldn't escape it. But Jason, he was different. With him, I felt seen. I felt understood. There was a spark, a connection that felt raw and real, and every moment I spent with him left me wanting more. We kept sneaking around, meeting in secret. Sometimes it was just small things, quick touches, stolen glances. But other times it was harder to ignore. The intimacy we shared was powerful, like a drug I couldn't quit. I could feel myself becoming more and more addicted to the feeling of being wanted by him, being touched by him in ways I hadn't experienced in years. But as I said, I was living a lie, and lies have a way of coming to light. One afternoon, while Michael and I were lounging by the hotel pool, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out without thinking and saw a message from Jason. It was just a simple text. "I miss you." I froze. For a split second, the world around me seemed to slow down. The guilt washed over me like a tidal wave, but I couldn't help the smile that crept onto my face. It was such a small thing, but the weight of it felt enormous. And then I looked up, and Michael was watching me. His eyes were soft, but there was something there. A look, an understanding, like he knew. Maybe he didn't know exactly what was happening, but he could tell something was off. The tension in the air became thick, suffocating. "Who was that?" he asked, his voice casual, but I could tell he was waiting for my response. He was always so trusting, so open, and it made me feel even worse. I felt like a fraud, like I was playing some twisted game where I was always one step away from being caught. I looked at him for a moment, and the words almost came out of my mouth, but I stopped myself. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't shatter everything. "It was just a friend," I said, and the lie tasted bitter in my mouth. But I had to say it. I had to keep up the facade, because I wasn't ready for the truth. Michael smiled, completely unaware, and went back to sipping his drink. But I could see it in his eyes. Something had changed. There was a quiet unease there, something I couldn't shake. Maybe he was starting to suspect. Maybe he wasn't. But the guilt gnawed at me. That night, Jason and I met up again. It had become our routine, sneak away from the hotel, spend a few stolen hours together. And every time I saw him, the need to confess, to make it stop, grew stronger. But then the pull between us would become overwhelming, and I would lose myself in him all over again. But that night, something was different. I could feel it in the air, that creeping sense that everything was about to fall apart. Jason seemed off. He was quiet, distant in a way that was unlike him. It made me nervous. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice a little shaky as I stood close to him. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "I can't do this anymore," he said quietly. Whatever this is between us. It's not right, and I don't want to keep hiding it." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The panic rushed through me in waves, my heart racing. "What are you saying?" I asked, trying to steady my voice, but the fear was palpable. "I'm saying that I can't keep pretending, and I don't want to hurt Michael anymore. This has gone too far." I felt the ground beneath me shift. I had never imagined it would end like this. I thought I could keep everything under control, keep Michael and Jason separate, keep living in this twisted bubble where nothing truly mattered. But now, Jason was pulling away, and I could feel the walls closing in on me. "You can't just walk away from this," I whispered, desperation creeping into my voice. "Please, I need you." Jason stepped back, his expression unreadable. I know you need me, but I can't be the one who's tearing everything apart. I'm not that person. I was on the verge of tears, but I couldn't let him see how much it hurt. I couldn't let him know how much I was falling apart inside. He turned to leave, and as he did, I reached out and grabbed his arm. Jason, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Please don't tell Michael. Please, I don't want to lose him. Not like this. He paused for a moment, his back still turned to me. I don't want to hurt you either. But this isn't something you can keep running from. I stood there frozen, watching him walk away. It felt like everything I had done, everything I had tried to keep hidden, was finally coming to light. And I had no control over it. The next day, Michael asked me if I was okay. He could tell something was wrong. He had been so patient, so trusting, and here I was, drowning in my own lies. But I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. Not when I wasn't sure I could even face it myself. The truth was I was losing both of them. Michael was starting to pull away, sensing the change in me, and Jason was walking away because he couldn't carry this burden anymore. And I was left standing in the middle of it all, a broken woman with no idea how to fix the mess I had made. It's hard to explain what happens after something like this. It's like a storm that hits all at once, and you think it might pass, but it doesn't. It just keeps raging until everything around you is shattered. That's what it felt like when everything finally came crashing down. The guilt I'd been carrying for so long, thinking I could manage it, thinking I could balance both of them, had turned into this unbearable weight, and when the truth finally came to light, there was no avoiding the fallout. I had always known, deep down, that I couldn't keep living this double life forever, but I also never thought it would end like this. I never thought I would have to face the truth, to look Michael in the eyes and admit what I had done. I never imagined how much it would hurt him, or how much it would hurt me. It was a few days after Jason had walked away, after he told me he couldn't do this anymore, that everything began unraveling. I don't even know why I thought I could avoid it. Maybe I was hoping Michael wouldn't find out. Maybe I thought I could just brush it under the rug, pretend like everything was fine. But when you betray someone you love, when you break that trust, it's impossible to just forget about it. It was a quiet morning when Michael finally confronted me. We had been acting like everything was normal, trying to keep up the charade. But I could see in his eyes that something had changed. He was different. He was distant in a way that I couldn't ignore. I had tried to convince myself that he hadn't noticed, that I could just keep going, but the truth was staring me in the face. We were sitting on the balcony of our hotel room, sipping coffee in the early morning sun. Michael was reading the newspaper, but he kept glancing at me, like he was trying to figure something out. I could feel the tension between us. The air was thick with it. It felt like we were both holding our breath, waiting for the inevitable. Finally, he set the paper down and looked at me directly. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I know something's been off, Emma," he said. "I've been trying to ignore it, trying to pretend everything's fine, but it's not. What's going on?" I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest, my hands suddenly cold and clammy. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. I had spent so many days lying to him, pretending nothing was wrong, that now, when faced with the truth, I didn't know how to respond. "Michael, The words caught in my throat, and I knew that I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I made a mistake. I finally managed to say, "I did something I'm ashamed of." He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and hurt, like he wasn't sure whether to believe me or not. "What do you mean? What did you do, Emma?" I couldn't meet his eyes. I didn't want to see the hurt in them. I kissed Jason," I said in a rush. My voice was shaking, and I could barely breathe. It didn't mean anything at first, but it spiraled. I spent more time with him, and I was confused. "I'm sorry, Michael. I don't know why I did it." He sat back in his chair, his face paling. I had never seen him look so stunned. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I watched him, hoping, praying that he would understand, that he would somehow forgive me. But the silence between us was suffocating. "Are you telling me you've been cheating on me this whole time?" His voice was so quiet, but the hurt in it was clear. I didn't mean to hurt you, Michael. I never wanted this to happen. My voice was breaking, but it did, and I know I can't take it back. I'm so sorry. For a long time, Michael didn't say anything. He just stared at me, like he was trying to process what I had just told him. I couldn't stand the silence. I wanted him to yell, to scream at me, to do anything but just sit there, staring at me like I was some kind of stranger. But he didn't. He just looked broken. Finally, he spoke. I don't know who you are anymore, Emma. This isn't the woman I married. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. They were so simple, but they carried so much weight. I felt like I had just shattered everything that had once been beautiful about our relationship. The person he had loved, the woman he had married, was gone, and I was the one who had destroyed her. I'm so sorry, Michael, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I never meant for it to go this far. I don't know what happened. I thought I could stop, but I couldn't. And now, I've lost you. He shook his head slowly, like he couldn't even bring himself to look at me anymore. You didn't just lose me, Emma, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You lost yourself, and you've lost me too. I could feel the ground slipping out from under me. I had never felt so small, so utterly devastated. In trying to fill this emptiness I had been feeling, in trying to find something more, I had ended up destroying everything that truly mattered. I had ruined the most important relationship of my life. The next few days were a blur. Michael and I barely spoke. He kept his distance, and I could see the walls he had built up around himself. He was broken, and I was the one who had done it to him. I could see in his eyes that he didn't know if he could forgive me, if he could ever look at me the same way again. And as much as I wanted to fix it, I knew that I couldn't. Jason had already disappeared from my life. He had made his choice, and I had no right to drag him back into this mess. But the truth was, he wasn't the answer. I had been looking for something in him that I thought was missing in Michael. But now I knew that the problem wasn't just Michael. It was me. I had lost myself, and I had lost everything that mattered in the process. In the end, I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't undo the damage I had done. The relationship I had with Michael was shattered, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my own broken heart. But the hardest part of all was knowing that I had made the choice to betray him. I had chosen to destroy the one thing that had once made me feel whole. And now, I had to live with the consequences.